It's for me, it's kind of weird. My whole adult life, 30 odd years, whenever I watch the cricket, he's either playing or commentating. So it's going to be, oh, it already has been watching the World Cup, but it's going to continue to be very weird, especially when summer rolls around, watching it and him not involved. It's different. What people saw of Shane on the international stage, especially in the first half of his career, that was just him.
And what about the second half of the thing?
Well, the second half of his career, he's had kids and all the rest of it. So, yes, it's still him, but you're talking about what he was like to grow up with. The first half of his career was probably no different to him as a teenager. Second half of his career, obviously, you then start to have those responsibilities in life, so you do start to grow as a person. And I think that there's a lot of athletes who, especially in team environments, not so much individual sports, but in team environments, where they mature later, but there's expectations on them to show that maturity a lot younger. It's a tough one. Sportsmen spend a lot of money, a hell of a lot of money, with mind coaches, trying to be able to block out all the external noise and just focus on the moment. Shane was wired differently to most people. He actually could only focus on the moment. He found it was foreign to him to hear the external noise. So he was wired, and I think that's probably a trait you'd find that's common amongst really, really successful sportsmen and successful businessmen for that matter. Like that innate ability to walk onto the field and just not think about anything else other than getting the batsman out or what needed to happen in that game, that was just the way he was wired. Everyone says, how can you do that? He couldn't not do that. But unfortunately that created some of his issues off the field because he didn't think about consequences of his actions. And that's just the way he was operated. So that's where he's wired. I can see that he's just wired differently to other people, and that was one of the essences of what made him so good. It was a hot, windy, wet summer's day. Storm was rolling in, it had been raining, and he was standing on the rail of the pier to jump over the jetty, and he slipped when he jumped and whacked his head on the side of the jetty and was floating face down in the water. I think he was about 14 at the time, and one of his friends was there and dived in and dragged him out. Otherwise, he probably would have drowned. So, I've said it before, but extremely thankful for Dave for giving us an extra, 38 years with him. The idea of it going wrong didn't enter his mind. And, most of us would have still jumped anyway, but that's the sort of thing that I mean. It just doesn't enter his mind that things might not, so if he's bowling to someone and there's, Australia need a wicket, the other team needs 4 runs to win, he's just thinking about, I'm going to get this guy out. He doesn't think about it going wrong, getting hit for 6 and tightening up. And so he just thinks about getting them out, and so he stays loose and stays focused on what he needs to do that, because the idea of failing isn't an option to him.
Everything was a competition.
Not so much in studies. Studies probably took secondary to his sport, but with everything else in life, everything was a competition. Like even as far as splitting a box of barbecue shapes, which we did, that was our treat each week growing up. So even that, I had to take it in turns of who split it, and he split it between the box and the bag, and you always try to trick the other one into picking the worst one. So everything was, whether it was board games, even in the pool, you couldn't just have a swim in the pool. There had to be a game created that became a competition. But just like normal brothers, played cricket up the driveway, we tormented each other, we teased each other, and also wanted the best for each other. That's just the nature of being brothers. If you always want to be better than the other one, it doesn't matter what you're playing, and it's always harder being the younger brother because you're giving away a couple of years in everything you're doing. But at the same time, it makes you better as well because you're trying to keep up with your older sibling. And of course, the older sibling cannot stomach losing to the younger siblings. So yeah, it was always a lot of fun.
And also, Warnie was always colourful on and off the pitch. I mean, how was he growing up in the growing up years? Like, you know, in school days and college days?
He never really changed. And I think that's one of the things about professional sport, especially if you reach the top at a really young age. It's really no different to being in the first 11 at school. You go from being the first 11 at school where everything's organised for you, to then being in the Australian team where everything's organised for you and everything's done for you. And so in a funny way, there's a lot of whilst people expect sportsmen to become pillars of the community and leaders and role models and all the rest of it, the way it's actually structured actually allows them to still be kids. So it's like it's a conflict.